Hey everyone, it's Michael. Look at this great quilt. I am so glad that I got this in the mail from my client Carrie. Uh, she sent me a picture of it before she sent it, just to make sure I wanted the quilt. And I said, of course I do. It's a paper piece quilt. I think it's a Deb Karasik pattern. You may ask yourself, okay, how do I quilt one of these custom quilting? And of course she lets me do whatever I want. So it's paper pieced. And if you look at it, you can tell there's a lot of pieces, which means something. There's going to be a lot of seams. So that's something to consider. And what kind of quilting do we want to do on this? Well, what is the main focus of this quilt? In my opinion, it's probably the quilt itself. It's the pattern. It's the paper piecing. So while I want to add some great things to it, I don't want to compete with the main focus of the quilt, which is this dynamic paper piecing, curved seams, etc. Right? So, okay, but I have some great ideas for it. One thing is, I will be stitching in the ditch for most of this, so that's a lot of stitching in the ditch. So I'm going to use rulers, of course. So what I have here, I'm probably going to use the straight 12 because it's my go-to. That will be for these longer seams that I use. For these spikes in the curved area, piecing area here, like this would be like what you'd see for a New York Beauty or pickle dish or a double wedding ring, those kind of things. I could go to the straight 8 because that's a pretty good length. The Ditch Everything Mini is a little too small for this, but anyway, so I'm probably going to alternate between the straight 12 and the straight 8 for those spikes. Okay, for the curve, for this inside curve, I found that the 10 is probably going to be the best. Hold on, let me turn off these lights real quick so I don't have too much glare. I think I'm going to use the 10. That looks really close to me. For the outside curve, I found the curve at 20 to be the closest. It's not perfect though. The 16 is too shallow, so probably an 18 would be great. I don't have an 18. Maybe I'll make one as my next project. So I'm gonna use the 20, and I'm just gonna pivot as I need to. For that outside part. Okay, so I'm using the curve at 20, the curve at 10, the straight 12, and maybe the straight 8. That's for all of this ditch work. The next thing is, all right, well, what is my overall plan besides stitching in the ditch? So I think I want to have all of the colored pieces pop up. And normally you would think lighter fabrics would come closer to you and the darker fabrics would recede. And then you can also think about warmer colors coming closer and cooler colors receding. But what I'm going to do is probably quilt more densely in the background fabric, which you can see it here. I considered following some of those lines of the background fabric. See how it's got the pattern? But I may be too busy. So I'll probably do some pebbling or something dense. Okay, so I've been stitching along here for a little bit, and I decided to go with the straight 8. It seems to be like the perfect length for these. The pressure I'm putting on the ruler is when I'm starting up at the top here, it's mostly right here by the hopping foot. Like I've told you before, you need to have the most pressure wherever that hopping foot is, or at least have control. My thumb is down here towards the end of the seam, so I may or may not move my fingers at all. If anything, I might just move a little bit as I come down, but you should be able to have full control of this span. It's only about like 4.5 inches. That should be doable, but go slow and walk your fingers if you're new and you want to, take it slow. What I was going to tell you is that in the point of all of these, I'm approaching it now. I'm talking about this point right here. There are a lot of seams coming here, and a couple of times on the previous spoke or two, I get a real loud sound, my needle's trying to get through all of that. And I did get a reset message on one of them where, so my machine just stopped right at that point. And if that happens to you, well, what I do on the Innova is attempt the hand crank and try to pull my needle up. That usually works. There's a reset option. I'm not sure. Whatever machine you're working on, the best thing to do is to not try to keep sewing with the machine, because obviously it stopped for a reason. So try to get the needle up manually and move your machine just a little bit, and then see if you can get back to stitching to normal. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, instead of going all the way to that point, is I'm just gonna barely put like a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch as my guide for where I want to stop, because I do not want to break my machine. And it will still look good for the quilt, so I'm not too concerned. But my goal, since I know that's a problem area, is going to be to try to avoid it a little bit. Okay, this stitch work is, it's a little off, but I'm okay with that. I don't know why I think I can talk and sew at the same time. But I do it a lot, don't I? Okay, so you're probably noticing I'm using this whole spike or spoke as my guide. I had contemplated just doing the dark here, but I changed my mind because I'm gonna put some sort of fill in this whole long spike, and I didn't want to put it just there. So who knows? I mean, it's up to you. If you have a quilt like this, it's your choice. Unless your customer tells you what you want, or if you're doing it for yourself, it's your choice. But yeah, I'm finding these lengths are perfectly fine not to walk my fingers. I'm still pivoting if I need to, if I don't have it perfectly straight. Okay, now I'm gonna come to the inside. Also up to you when you want to switch and go left side, right side with your ruler. It's not, see, that's a problem spot too. I could hear my machine wanting to stall, but I made it through there. You hear that? So once again, that's just a hazard or something to look out for when you're doing a paper piece quilt like this with all these points. And not even just paper piece, any quilt that has a lot of points, a lot of seams coming together. Let's think about like an 8-pointed star at the center of it. At all costs, try to avoid the very center and do some quilting that doesn't cause you to go there. Which brings up something interesting too. Here I go talking again. The whole thing about pressing seams, you know, you're either in the camp of you like to press them open or like to go to one side, or you don't really care. But some people are really insistent on the way that they press their seams, and you're going to need to adjust your quilting to that, because there are really times where press to one side seams will cause you a little bit of a hazard with your quilting, just like these points do. Depending on how many intersections are coming in pressed to one side. So if all of this was pressed to this side, which it is, there's just lots of fabric right here. So the idea is if you press open, you're kind of distributing that weight, and you don't have this bump. You have a gradual bump that takes up a 1/2 of an inch instead of a extreme bump that takes up a 1/4 inch, if that makes sense. But I'm not here to tell you to press your seams open. I'm just saying what to look out for as you're long arm quilting, or quilting on your home machine too, if you haven't already encountered these kind of things. I know I talk to some people, or to you guys, as if you are new, but I know that a lot of you are not. So just take what what I say with a grain of salt. And perhaps I might say something that makes sense. You're like, oh, I never thought about that. Or perhaps I might say something you're like, oh, what an idiot. And do it the way you want. Okay, so I'm just going along here. Nothing super exciting. And you can see my stitch in the ditch is not in the ditch. It's just slightly off. Sometimes I go right in the ditch, sometimes I don't. But in the whole scheme of things, it's pretty good. And if I stop talking, I will usually a little bit better. Sometimes not. What I didn't mention is that I'm using Glide 40 on the top, and I told you it was in teal. The bottom, I've been using Glide 60 for my bobbin thread, or bottom line from Superior, but lately I've been going completely with Glide, so I use Glide 60 in the bobbin and 40 on top. The bobbin is it's also kind of a teal color that I'm using, and I'm not going to change that at all, because you can probably see the backing fabric, or I'll show it to you in a minute. But the only time I would change it is if it pops up here in this lighter color. If I'm using white or any of these lighter colors, if I'm seeing bobbin pop-ups from the bottom, then, well, first I'm going to try to adjust my tension so I don't get the pop-ups. But if I do, then I will consider changing the bobbin thread color. We'll see how that goes when I get to it. And then also I'm using one layer of Quilter's Dream wool today, only because I had it. And this is not a huge quilt. This quilt is, let's see, 53 inches square. And I just happen to have some wool that fit perfect, so that's what I'm using. So the wool's gonna give me a little bit more loft. And I wanted that because I want some of these spokes and things to have more dimension. All right, let's get back to quilting straight lines. Okay, I got more to say. What I was gonna say is that I just started thinking about Baptist fans while I'm doing this, because a lot of you know me as the Baptist fan guy. And would I use Baptist fans on this? I don't know, probably not. Even though I say that Baptist fans are good for quilts that are real busy, scrappy quilts, things like that. It's just that this particular quilt has so much design and so many things that I want to emphasize that Baptist fans would not do it justice. I think it would be too busy also. So no, I wouldn't use those on this. I would do exactly what I'm doing. Lots of intense, time-consuming ruler work. Ooh, look. Okay, sorry. So, look, this seam, I didn't do this, obviously. So, Carrie, I don't know if Carrie sewed this or if she purchased this. I think she bought this, actually. So, whoever pieced it, the seam is coming up. And I'm going to just quilt right over it, because that is my line. I'm going to make sure that I'm right on there, and I'm going to quilt it down. If that may or may not be what you would do, but watch me do it. I'm quilting right over that. I'm making sure that I am on the correct side of that seam. Okay, so I just fixed the problem. I don't think that looks bad at all. Sure, it's a 16th or a 32nd inch away from the seam, but at least now this is secure and there's not going to be a hole. Okay, so didn't notice that until just now. Lots of little details are hard to see when you first inspect the quilt, and that certainly is not something I saw before. Yeah, I think Carrie bought this quilt on eBay because she sews some of her own and then she buys quilts and has them quilted. She is just all about any kind of quilt. She wants them in her home, so I think she really liked this pattern. Sorry, Carrie, if I gave away a secret that you didn't sew it. Secret's out now. On the four corners of this quilt, inside the border, I'm simply ditching the border and then doing a 1/4 inch echo on the inside of the inside part, not the border. Once I have ditched the border and done the 1/4 inch on the inside, I'm putting a swirl fill. Okay, so now really at this point I'm going to stop talking and put on some music for you and let you just enjoy the quilting for about 5 minutes anyway before we get to the next section that I want to explain. Just to let you know, towards the end of the video, I am showing some pictures of the completed quilt, and you will notice some elements that I do not talk about or film. So if you have questions about anything that you see, or the rulers that I'm using, I design my own rulers, so I can answer questions about my rulers and ruler work in general. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them ASAP. Okay, so enjoy. Here we go. is a stitch in the ditch on the other side of this striped curve shape. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to kind of highlight this V in the orangey section, but I'm going to take it out to here and come back in. So it's going to super pronounce this V, and then I'm going to come back here and finish the stitch in the ditch. Now that's all I'm doing here because I'm going to go back later with white thread, and I'm going to be ditching all of the white shapes, so this will get the ditch during the next color. Okay, so I'm using the big 30 on this one. It's not a perfect match, but it works for this. Okay, so I'm here at that V, and I'm just gonna switch and take this line all the way out. I'm going to stitch down and then come back in to finish outlining this V. Same thing on the side. Okay, and then I'll finish the curve. So this is one time where I'm going to break thread and stop here. Okay, so I do that with each of those sections. Sometimes it's just the way it's going to happen. So I don't mind putting in the extra effort for that. So I'm doing this to each one of those. Okay, so here's where things kind of look scary. Like, wow, what a nightmare. What am I going to do with this? So I have ditched this huge skinny star first, and now I think I may have told you in all of the white I'm putting, I'm going to use white thread, and I'm going to actually pebble it. I'm going to sink that down. So how to go about doing that? I don't want to do a bunch of starts and stops, but I'm probably going to have to. So while I'm on the interior part, and I'm not going to do these, but I'm going to start with this shape here. I'm going to treat this like a diamond wedge until, at least up till here. So that means I'm going to ditch in here like that. Did you see that pattern that I'm making? I'm kind of go here, 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 fill it in with my pebbles, and then I probably am going to break thread and start again here. I don't know that I want to have white ditching here, so I'm probably going to break thread and do each of these sets of, I'm going to call them wings for now. Once I get to this ring, which is just almost out, it still includes the very tip of these long spokes of the star. I can do this all the way around the quilt. All the way around that ring. So I can do that ditching and do the inside ditching and fill in my pebbles there. So that's the one time that I can go continuous. But then when I get back out here, I'm gonna have to do the same thing that I did on the other side, and I will probably treat these as a set of wings, ditch around and pebble inside, break thread, and come back. I don't know, I may change my mind and see what it looks like to do just that little part of, it looks like half an inch, 3/4 of an inch or so. I may, but I'll get to that when I get to it. Okay, here we go. So I'm doing a basic 1-inch piano keyboarder, and when I'm traveling down, I don't have my ruler lines to help me, because I like to keep my ruler, as you know, in front of the hopping foot, more closer towards me. I don't like to put it back here. So what I do when I'm on this side is I use my ruler lines to measure how far down to go. So I'm getting ready to go across. Okay, now when I get to this side, I always go back and come forward again on the side that I would have skipped, and that's because I like to give whoever's going to bind this quilt, I like to give them a nice stitch line all the way around the quilt on the edge, besides just the basting stitch, to help with binding. So that's a little added thing that I do. Either do that for yourself or for your client. It's really nice. Okay, so now that I'm across here, I'm going to use my ruler lines, and I'm going to just travel down to the next inch mark. Okay, so this is super easy peasy. Then go over. Now when I'm on this side, I don't go back because we're not talking about binding here. So I'm just stitching in the ditch here, using the ruler, going down an inch, going across, and then once again I do that little go back so that I hit that inch so whoever's binding can have an easier time, and then back down here. So this is super simple, but and I do that on the whole perimeter of it. But anyway, this is how I handle this side, because typically I go ahead and I do my border, piano key, the whole thing, so I advance the quilt. Some people, you may do things completely in rows across and take care of your border and then go back, but this is the last bit that I'm using the same color thread, so I'm just doing the whole thing. So there's inevitably going to be one side where I'm traveling down. The rest of it, I can use my ruler lines and go back and forth and then up. Okay, so this is the only side that I need to do this. Not much more to explain about a piano keyboarder, since it's just a simple 1-inch one that never changes. All right. So this was a really fun quilt to quilt. Thank you, Carrie. And paper piece quilts do have their challenges, but they're not unlike any other quilt with lots of intersections and small pieces. It's just a matter of planning how you want to, tackle it. And had I done it again, I actually would have added a little bit more quilting. And I didn't film everything that I quilted, but what I did, I was glad to share with you, and I hope you enjoyed. So I will see you next time, and I hope everyone is having a safe and happy holiday season.